Hi, my name is Jane. I am the Gutsy Guru right here on YouTube, and I hope that you will subscribe and follow. I wanted to start this particular session by saying thank you to someone very, very important in our community, and that is Diane, D-I-A-N-N-E, Tarot. She has done a fantastic job of holding space for all of us as we have had the ups and downs of the last administration. She has been there and comforted every single one of us. And yes, we did find out that her mother had gotten sick, and then she has let us know that her mother passed over the last week. It just breaks my heart, but also to understand that every single time that I've seen her, she has the biggest and most beautiful smile that I've ever seen. I pulled a card, I pulled the Eagle card, and I thought that was super important and super powerful because the eagle represents the spirit. It's the power of great spirit, the connection to the divine. It has the ability to live in the spirit world. And if you are a member with Diane, which I hope you are, you'll be able to go to her and listen to what she teaches you about moving into that spirit world. And then there's time where we do transition, and when we do make that transition, it's then that we are with the eagle. The eagle represents the purple color, purple mountain majesty. I happen to live near a lot of mountains, so I love that purple mountain majesty, and I love to be able to look at my eagles. I get my binoculars out as often as I possibly can and go bird watching. But I wanted to share this one quote out of the medicine book, and it talks about what I feel that Diane represents. Eagles represent the state of grace, achieved through hard work, understanding, and completion of tests of initiation, which results in the owning of one's personal power. It is only through the trial of experiencing the lows in life as well as the highs, and through the trials of trusting one's connection to Great Spirit, that the right to use the essence or the energy of the eagle is earned. Diane has most certainly earned the right to use the spirit of the eagle, and I know that her mother is on an eagle's wing, going to the highest height to another realm. I am so sorry about your mother, Diane. I have told a story a lot about a woman by the name of Jenny. I'm going to retell that story, but I'm going to do my recorded version of it because I like that version. And so as you all are listening to that, whenever you hear the word Jenny, replace that name with Diane. And by the time you get to the end of that story, you'll understand why Diane is truly a guide for all of us, a blessing for all of us. Namaste, namaste, namaste.
One story and one person I want to tell about in particular was a woman I met right here in Utah, and her name was Jenny. And this woman was a naturalist. She was out, and she took people out into outdoor trainings, and she was a wilderness woman. Now, this is a woman that I met her, and she had told me about the time when she had just come off of a 3-day pack trip. And as she was coming back off of this 3-day pack trip, she had said that she had experienced a very unusual experience on this 3-day trip. On the first day of her pack trip, she had taken her horse up onto the side of this mountain. She had ridden into this meadow, and into this meadow she saw a large barnyard. And in the middle of this barnyard, there was a whole group of clucking chickens in this barnyard. Lots and lots of chickens in this barnyard. And in the middle of this barnyard was a full-grown eagle. Now, this seemed rather peculiar to this woman, and she thought it was unusual that there would be an eagle pecking chicken seed with the chickens. So she decided to walk into the barnyard, walk into the chicken coop to find the barnyard keeper. And she walked in and she said to the barnyard keeper, she said, "Excuse me, sir," she said, "did you know that you have a full-grown eagle in the middle of your barnyard plucking at chicken feed with all of the chickens?" And you know, this barnyard keeper looked back and he said, "Yeah," he goes, "I know that." He says, "That's Matilda. She's a fine bird, but just a little confused." she says, you see, there was an eagle's egg out by our front gate, and there was a chicken, one of our hens, sat on her, and she hatched into our barnyard. Matilda thinks she's a chicken, and a chicken she will be. Now, this really disturbed Jenny, because she said to this barnyard keeper, she said, but this chicken has the heart of an eagle. And if it has the heart of an eagle, then it deserves to be in the skies, not on the earth. She said, may I teach this eagle how to fly? Now, this barnyard keeper's kind of looking at her and like, this woman's real crazy. She's kind of, she's pretty rough looking around the edges and figuring, well, what the heck, give her a try, because she probably won't leave unless we say yes. And so he says, sure, go ahead. So Jenny walks back out into the middle of the barnyard, and she picks up Matilda. And she picks up Matilda, she begins to stroke her, and she's just very empowering. And she says, Matilda, you don't even know who you are. You obviously don't realize that you're not a chicken. You are an eagle. You're very different than all of the others around you. You're an eagle. And Matilda kind of grabbed hold of her arm and looked down and see, all of a sudden, Jenny had said to Matilda, she says, now, why don't you just spread out your wings a little bit, and why don't you reach out and see if you could fly? And so, Matilda sort of checks out the situation and looks back at Jenny and says, this woman is really crazy. Obviously, she doesn't know I am a chicken. Obviously, she doesn't know where I belong. Obviously, she doesn't know where I have a place in my life. And where I belong is down in the barnyard with all of the other chickens. And Matilda jumped down to be with all the other chickens. Well, a few minutes passed, and about a couple hours passed, and Jenny decided to rethink her approach. And so she comes back in, and she decides maybe she needs to take Matilda to a higher height. So she climbs with Matilda on her arm up to the top of the house. And she's standing on the roof of the house, and she then says to Matilda, she says, Matilda, look up to the skies. She said, you are an eagle. You belong in the skies. You don't belong to the earth. You have the heart of an eagle. You have some very, very special qualities that you haven't even examined yet. She said, now all you have to do is spread out your wings and fly. Now the more Jenny talked, the more afraid Matilda became. Matilda began to hold her breath. She began to hold on tighter and tighter and tighter and would not let go because she knew who she was. She was a chicken. Now she jumped down. And as she jumped down, her wings did go out just a little bit. And for the first time, she got the experience of flight in action. There was a warm breeze and it felt so nice. But it was something very new that Matilda had never experienced. Now, Jenny, once again, had to refigure her approach. And so she then made the decision on the very next morning that she would take Matilda out of the barnyard and take her with her to the top of a mountain. As they left the barnyard, Matilda's eyes were glued on that barnyard because there were her clucking friends. There was what she knew, and she was leaving it all behind. And as they went up the mountain, Jenny was able to all of a sudden catch a glimpse of two beautiful eagles gliding along, flying loop-de-loop. And she said, I want to show you everything that an eagle can do on this very day. She said, right there, that is who you are. That's who you were born to be. Now, all you have to do when we get to the top of this mountain is to remember what you're seeing right now. Well, they got up to the top of the mountain, and poor little Matilda was looking back to the barnyard, just waiting, just not knowing really what to expect. And when Jenny got off the horse, she pulled out of her saddlebags a small mirror. And she said to Matilda, she said, now take a look at yourself. She said, do you see who you are? She said, do you see that you're much like the eagles above? You're not like the chickens below. And it is time for you to identify who you really are. Now, it was a very strange moment when she put that mirror down, because all of a sudden what she found was that as Matilda was having her little talons on her arm, but her arms began to spread out, and the sun was shining, and they were at the top of this beautiful cliff, and Matilda was beginning to relax into who she really was. You see, with a naturalist, with a guru, it makes it so much easier. And all of a sudden, her courage, through her imagination, her courage, and her ambition, all of a sudden, with one triumphant swoop, she jumped and she flew into the skies. Now, this is not to say that she did not ever come back to her barnyard to have a nostalgic visit. There's a pretty good chance that she did do that. She was telling me this story. I found that I was that chicken that was stuck in my own mental barnyard. And I hadn't become a public speaker, hadn't had a chance to really begin to ask myself the questions to separate, to identify, to mature into my own self-expression. And I realized as I listened to that story that Matilda and I were the same. That I had been stuck in my own mental barnyard, that it was so much easier and so much more comfortable for me to peck away at the old seeds of consciousness, even though they no longer worked, that it was so much easier to be around my clucking friends, so much easier to stay on the lower level than it was to move above who I thought I was. Could that be true for anyone else in this room? You see, I think that when Matilda jumped off that cliff, that I personally could feel myself flying, and I realized that looking at the mirror of life was about these three things. Looking into the mirror of life is about trusting yourself. Number 2, it's about risking beyond your imagination. And number 3, it's about accepting a naturalist along the way. I believe that Matilda is living in each one of us, waiting to fly. And maybe some of us are getting stuck in our barnyards longer than others. But we all have the true potential to fly.